Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
So, a question for the audience. Is your startup flying blind without a financial model that shows investors you're ready to win? That's where Vera steps in. She helps early stage companies, especially in life sciences and healthcare tech, take their big ideas and build financial models that map out the real milestones, attract serious investors, and drive growth with confidence. Our guest today is Vera Belaoussoff from B-Spot Consulting. Vera is the founder and principal of B-Spot Consulting based in Toronto, Canada. With more than 25 years of experience in financial analysis, research, business development, and operations in the life sciences world, Vera knows how to help early-stage companies turn their ideas into action. She works as a fractional CFO and strategic analyst, helping entrepreneurs from pre-seed to Series A translate their business plans into smart, flexible financial models. Her work shines when it comes to spotting development hurdles, validating commercial opportunities, and guiding companies through their capital market journey. Vera's clients include companies in medical devices, therapeutics, materials science, and healthcare IT in Canada and around the world, all looking for practical, strategic support to grow with confidence. Vera, welcome to our show today, and it's really good to have you here. And do you have a favorite quote or saying?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. This is my first experience in a podcast, and so far you guys are very welcoming. Hopefully I don't mess up too badly in my answer. It's that whole competitive aspect that you always want to be the best at everything. Anyway, I do have a favorite quote, and my favorite quote is actually from my dad. And my dad was a university professor, and when we were growing up, he would be really annoying because my brother and I would learn something in school and come back to him and say, "Hey, Dad, we learned this." And we're like, "We just told you." And he's like, "Dad, I don't know about that." I'm like, so that usually got translated into, well, who said that and how do they know? And that is honestly, if you're looking at following an analytical path and understanding the world around you, that's the underlying tenet you need to follow. Who said that? And how do you know? What's your source material? Is it trust me, bro? Or there actually a PubMed reference behind that that's published in a peer-reviewed journal, which is my go-to place because I work in the sciences field. So Dad taught both me and my brother to scrutinize the things that people were saying, but he was still really annoying throughout all of it.
Do you have a favorite literary quote?
Oh, my favorite. I love Hamlet. Hamlet is the anti-hero, and he's a facet character. But then he has this quote where he goes, and he's so forceful and dark, and it's such a change, and it goes, and I still remember, it goes, "Now is the very witching hour of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes contagion upon the world. Now must I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on." And I just think it's so, wow, this guy really means it.
That'd be perfect for Halloween, too. It would set the stage perfectly well. And I understand you have a couple of interesting hobbies, and I think the word en garde is part of the sequence.
The word on guard is part of the sequence. I am a fencer and I fence competitively. It keeps me healthy, gives me a great social group, and sometimes I even win some medal. So it's hitting the mark on all those fronts. But yeah, it's just something I've been doing for quite a long time on and off in my life. It's a great life sport. You can do it at any age. It's kind of like skiing. You can do skiing when you're little, and you can do it when you're old and still get down the hill. Fencing is kind of the same way. We have a bunch of old people fencing as well, but we enjoy it.
Wow. And you have a couple of heroes, and one is more social, one is more in alignment with your business. What's the backstory there?
So Terry Fox Of course, who doesn't know Terry Fox? He's just an amazing individual who had a dream about having cancer research be more prominent, not just because of that, but the personal physical perseverance that this man had and how he galvanized the entire country and basically started the publicly funded research of cancer. He was the first one to do it. So all that is amazing, his social good, his perseverance. But this man also ran the equivalent of a marathon every single day. He was an incredible athlete and person, and he was a Renaissance man in Canada. We adore him as a hero, and I think we couldn't have a better hero. Social good, perseverance, athleticism, ticking off all the boxes.
And Francis Crick, that's a name I'm not familiar with.
Francis Crick was the co-discoverer of DNA with James Watson. So at the very beginning, he and Watson discovered the double helix, the structure. Now, maybe they did use Rosalind Franklin's science notes and to use that. That's an open question. But what I appreciate about Francis Crick is that he continued to do quite groundbreaking research throughout his entire career. He jumped from DNA to proteins to transfer RNA, which is the messenger in the cells, and in latter years worked on the neuroanatomy of the brain and the biology of consciousness. The Vatican was not quite so happy with him when he's talking about the biology of consciousness and the soul, but he was an incredible mind and very wide-ranging. If I have to pick a scientific hero, it would be him.
This all leads us into what you do for a living today. You take your dad's phrase. Where did you hear about that and how did they know? And you kind of wrap in the Francis Crick elements to it. You now are doing financial modeling. You've been trained as an accountant, perhaps? Would that be fair to say?
No, I'm trained as a scientist, so I have my background. My undergrad is in genetics from University of Manitoba, go Manitoba. And my master's is in molecular biology from York University here in Toronto. I came to Toronto to do that. Met a boy, stayed, built my life here. I did research in the pharmacology department at U of T looking at the dopamine D4 receptor, which was great. It was wonderful. We had Nature papers. It was very cutting edge stuff, but science takes a long time. And I'm like, I just want to see something make it over the finish line. So I thought for a while what I was going to do, and I thought I need to do something more goal oriented. My next door neighbor said, "Why don't you become an analyst?" And I'm like, "Well, what's that?" We're having lemon martinis on the front porch, and I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I want to do something goal oriented." He said, "Why don't you become an analyst?" And I'm like, "Okay." So I looked into it. I said, "Well, I can do this. I know science. I can write. I like to research stuff. I don't necessarily want to do lab stuff, but I like research. And this is paper research." My dad calls it grant writing for the capital markets, being an analyst. So I did a stint on the sell side with a small boutique investment firm called Harris Partners. Did a couple years there. Then I went to the buy side at Scotia Castles, which, as you know, is the investment arm of Scotiabank, one of our big five banks. I covered North American healthcare equities. So I covered everything from Amgen to Zoll. And if it was healthcare related, I covered the insurers, the pharmacy benefit managers. I was always trying to pawn the insurers off on the banking analyst. He wasn't touching any of that. The analyst role is fantastic training because you build models and you have to look up and you have to look out and you have to try and predict the future because stock prices and stock price movements are forward looking. Accounting is backwards looking. So you're looking at what happened in the past and you want to make sure that all your ducks in a row and you don't get into trouble with the authorities or the tax people and everything like that. But the analyst role is really, really forward looking, and you have to think many years into the future so that you can say, okay, this company says they're doing a phase 3 trial. What does that mean? How big is the market? And you have to independently validate what the companies are telling you, because the good ones will tell you the properly defined market size, and they will give you all the background and references, but some don't necessarily talk about the competition that much. They're talking about their story. So you have to go and find out what the competition is. It may also be a publicly traded company. So, company A may be talking about company B, and then there's company C in the background. And you got to put all this mishmash into a mix and say, okay, company is going into phase 3 trials. It's a big market. What is the risk of the clinical trial? What is the risk of the company? Is the company going to go bankrupt? What's the regulatory environment? Do I trust management? Are they doing a good job? So it's very holistic. You got to look at the whole thing. When I left the banking industry to go into operations in small biotech and life science companies, I carried that same viewpoint forward. Spent time in oncology, neurology, cardiology. In 2020, during COVID, I did a pivot and I started consulting for little entrepreneurial life science companies, because not just biotech, medical device as well. And I really like it. My niche has turned into building financial models for startups, recognizable to Wall Street and Bay Street, with 5-year quarterly models that lay out all the expenses that the company's going to go through, because these companies are very capital thirsty. They need to raise enough money to get over that bridge. Don't build a bridge to nowhere. What I like to do is sit down with the entrepreneurs who usually are quite smart scientists and engineers, but they may be first-time entrepreneurs. They've not done this before. So it's a bit of guidance and financial mentoring, as well as developing the practical tools, taking their business plan, assuming they have one. If not, we work on that. Translating it into an Excel model, translating Word into Excel, because their PowerPoint has to tell the story. It has to be the same story told in the business plan. That has to be the same story told in numbers. The numbers are what is going to convince an investor to invest in you. If the market isn't big enough, they're not going to want to put money towards you. If you don't have a path to market, they're not going to invest in you. So let's have a plan. A lot of first-time entrepreneurs know the next step, because everybody is at get to the next step. Nobody has told them, oh, hold on. Let's sit down. You don't have any money. Sit down in front of your computer while you don't have any money and you don't have any expenses, because you're a startup. Sit down, figure out what your plan is, figure out how you're going to get that, talk with people, think about it, map it out. It's going to be wrong. It's going to change. But if you have the sort of skeleton, you can put skinny arms on it or fat arms on it, or funny head. You can dress it up, put a hat on. Things become clearer as you approach that time, as time moves along. But if you're looking 5 years out, nobody knows. But what people want to know, your investor wants to know, is, have you thought about it? Have you stress tested? Have you made an alternate plan? What are your options? Are you running your company in a way that you can survive a couple of hiccups? Or are you overbuilding the company? Do you think that you're going to raise, what was this saying? I think it was Mike Tyson. It says, no good plan survives the first punch, or something like that. No good plan, sir. If you have a plan, if you plan for success, there's going to be some bump along the way. Plan for success, but plan for failure as well. But you've got to know where the moving parts in your company are and what's at the end.
From working with
people from different disciplines. You got your start where people were wearing lab coats, and then you got into financial modeling. I'm guessing that unless someone was a polymath, you might as well have been speaking Swahili. How do you get them engaged enough to give you the answers so you can even put it in a spreadsheet?
It's very simple. Actually, it's all about the story. Entrepreneurs are very passionate. A lot of people start companies or technologies because a family member has had a terrible disease or condition that was unresolved. These entrepreneurs invent something to address that. If I sit down with somebody, I say, okay, what's your story? And they'll tell me the story. A lot of times, their stories about their aunt or their brother. They have a specific patient in mind. They have an individual, and their focus is on that individual. When I talk with people about building out a financial model, I mean, it can be very dry, but if you keep the patient at the center of the entire model, it's the answer to how big is the market. It's the answer to what is the regulatory pathway. It's the answer to who are the stakeholders. Here's a thought process that might be useful for some first-time entrepreneurs listening to your show. Hopefully it's useful. And I'll use cardiovascular disease as an example, because I have a great idea for patients who have cardiovascular disease. What's great about it? What's the benefit? Is it quality of life? Are you saving adverse events? Are you extending life? Those are three different things, and it's going to drive your market depending on what those benefits are. It's going to drive decisions about the evidence you need to collect and the regulatory pathway once you figure out the benefit. Who actually benefits? Is it really for the patient? Is it for the provider? Is it for the administrator? Those are separate questions. And of course, the best situation is when your product has a benefit for all three of those stakeholders, right? Then you have a really good product, and it's not just, oh, this has a cute feature that, it's got a red light rather than a green light. Feature-driven product sales aren't necessarily my jam. Using cardiovascular disease as a model, it's like, what type of cardiovascular disease? What's the market size? Who's the customer? What's the call point? Are you talking about a primary care physician? Are you talking about a hospital discharge patient? Are you talking about preventative care? Those are all different scenarios, and they are vastly different markets, and they have vastly different outcomes in terms of how you build the model. So know your product and know the clinical commercial value of your product. You got to dig.
For some of our audience, especially those venturing into this space, it's one thing if I'm coming up with a widget, a new business card, but when you're talking about the life sciences or the biotechnical area, what's the lifespan of a project? If I come up with a new pharmacological process, a new drug, a vaccine, what is the typical life cycle, and what are the typical amount of monies that are required or funding to make it go from A to Z? Before even assuming that you're getting some revenues to help offset some of the costs.
So it depends. Medical devices are easier because the timelines are faster, and just throwing numbers out there, $2 to $5 million to develop a device. And it could be a couple of years, 2 to 5 years. Money is the grease that speeds the wheel of progress. If you have a lot of money, you can make things go faster because you don't have to pause in the middle of every more money as you reach the first milestone. And then you're like, okay, this is a value inflection point. And now I have to go out and reach the new group of investors who can write bigger check sizes and convince them that they need to put money into the product for the next stage of development. Hopefully you're increasing the valuation of your company as you hit the progress milestones. Pharmaceutical drugs can be very different. Average could be 10 years to develop. The first part of the development can take a few $1 million before you even get to humans, easily a few $1 million, testing out the safety, testing out the toxicity, testing out the distribution in the body. And if it's an absolutely novel technology, the hurdle's going to be higher and the regulatory authorities are going to ask for more. And it's going to cost tens of millions of dollars. There's not even a question about it. Companies will do phase 1. So there's 3 phases. Phase 1, which is early exploratory, phase 2, and safety. Phase 2 is evidence of efficacy, but not powered to be sure that what you're seeing is correct. And then the phase 3 trials are larger, and those are the trials that the regulatory bodies need to see the evidence to say that, yes, this has a benefit to the patient. Companies will often look to partner after phase 1 or phase 2 because, especially if you're a single product company, going out and trying to convince investors to give you $200 million can be a hard sell.
Is there a tax write-off for any of that?
There is tax loss carry forwards. So you carry your tax losses in terms of research. If you are an acquiring company, like this happened with J&J, they acquired some company, I forget which, and in 1 quarter got the drug approved. And so then because they had the possibility of making revenues off of that drug, they were able to claim the tax loss carry forwards that came with that acquired company. And so, they took all these tax losses below the line. It was a timing issue, the tax loss recognition to match with the timing of the approval. So they took it in that quarter. And of course, nobody was expecting it. Everybody freaked out. What's happening? And everybody had a crash course in tax loss accounting or timing of recognition of the tax losses. That's pretty fun.
I'm guessing here's where the biggest excitement and the biggest despair is. What is involved and what modeling fits where you don't want to do 2 years of spreadsheets of design just to get someone to the next. Tell me about pre-seed financial modeling.
Pre-seed, this is the very first money that people look to raise. They have a story, an idea, a concept. The product's not built yet. They might have done something in the lab, or it might be research coming out of an academic lab. There is data on the drug and what it does, but you haven't started a company around it. You need to have intellectual property. You need to file your patents. Without patents, you don't have anything because people can they don't have to use your product if it's not protected. So first step is to get patents. Second step is to get a little bit of money. You don't 100% need to do financial modeling at the early stage. You can go to your friends and family and some angels, and you can get small amounts of money. You can apply for non-dilutive funding. You can get small amounts of non-dilutive funding, and you can progress your product to the next stage. It's not going to get very far down the road, but you can progress it to a point where you say, look, I've got a thing on the benchtop and it looks like an octopus, but it works. So now we need money to develop it into a smaller octopus, or maybe, cut off some of the arms. You can get small amounts of money from big-hearted individuals who aren't asking you for a financial model. But once you get to a larger check size, you're going to a more professional type of investor. It's their business, right? So they want to know what the risk is investing in you. So they're going to ask for a financial model. But I personally believe my business, that's why I believe in it. The earlier you do things and know where you're going and you stress test your market size and you get all your ducks in a row. This is my regulatory pathway, or I think this is my regulatory pathway because of this, but it has to be validated. I've talked with a bunch of healthcare practitioners and they tell me, this is the market. I did some research. I think it's this big. This has to be validated. The money to build a product has to be validated. You have to go out and talk to product design engineering firms if you do medical device, or you have to know how much it costs to do toxicology or other things. So you need to know how much money you need to spend. Where's your next value inflection point? I'll stick with medical devices because it's easier. You have a concept, a product, a prototype, proof of principle, and then you progress this product to more commercial things and you get to the production product, which you can then get over the finish line at the regulatory authorities. So there's value inflection points here. You're pitching to an investor. Can you say to them, I'm going to have my prototype in 6 months. I'm going to have my alpha in 6 months after that. And another 9 months after that, I'm going to get my commercial product, file it 3 months with the regulatory authorities. 3 months after that, they're going to prove it, and the market is this big. That is a much cleaner story. And for each of those points, if you know how much money you need to spend, you can say with confidence to your investor, this money is going to take us to here, and then we're going to do a seed round. And then that money is going to take us to here, and then we're going to do a Series A round, right? And so they understand that you understand your capital journey pathway. So you are instilling confidence in your investor that you know what is required and you're mindful of the cost. For example, one of the things that I say to people, it's more like financial mentoring. I said, okay, you're at the university, you're not paying rent. I got all the line items. I try to make it as granular as possible. Okay, you're not paying rent now. How about in 2 years? Are you going to pay rent? Okay, let's put a number in. Meals and entertainment. I mean, granular, right? Are you going to spend money on meals and entertainment? Bank fees? What about IT? Oh, you have your own computer. What about somebody you hire? You'll have to give them a computer. They're all the things that need to be looked at on a line by line basis. You want to go to a conference? That's not even the budget. Put it in the budget. You think it's going to be $4,000? Let's put in $5,000. Because something always happens. This is why it's not accounting, because accountants are very concerned about the exact number. If we're doing projections, we're like, budget quote from the design engineering firms. And then when it comes to negotiation, it'll be less than that, right? So you want to have the high end of the range when you're looking to build the budget at how much money you need to get to the next stage of development. You don't want to go back to your investors thing, guys. I ran out of money. Can you give me a little more? I had some unexpected expense. You don't want that.
Vera, I've got a lay of the land question. You're in Toronto,
Yes.
and there's Ontario Healthcare, there's Ontario Financing, there's Ontario Universities. There's a model in America that every number is like 2 digits more. How portable is Canadian modeling in this industry down there?
From the entrepreneurial side?
Are you
Like the
raising money in Ohio or at the Mayo Clinic, or is it a North American model or is it an Ontario model?
So the model that I am building for the companies is usually a North American model. And by that, I mean mainly America, because that is where the patients are. And in terms of value, it's about the global market for whichever indication you're looking at. Talking with investors, they understand that if the US market is this big, the global market is approximately twice that. Nobody expects the little entrepreneurs to come up with a very detailed model for Japan, for example. That is going to be done in partnership with a company, because the barriers to entry in Japan have to be solved by Japanese companies, unless you have huge amounts of experience in the space and you've done it before. We don't need to look at the granularity of Japan, for example, but if we're developing a heart failure product, Japan may have less heart failure, but it also has a population that is the oldest in the world. You need to know the demographics of the world and where your patients are. They're not in Africa if you're looking at heart failure. It's a very youthful population in the continent of Africa. On the other hand, the Middle East has extremely bad cardiovascular risk. India, Pakistan, South Asians, very bad cardiovascular risk. They have very small vasculature, right? Smaller pipes get clogged more easily and cause more problems. You have to know where your patients are. In France, for example, I need to have a distributor. In Italy, I need to have a distributor. For Canadians, the British market is pretty familiar. Our medical system is modeled after the NHS, and they're English speaking. So it's easy to do business, talk with key opinion leaders, get your physician champions, meet them at conferences. While you are developing your product, meet with key opinion leaders in different countries, the physicians, find out who does what, who's interested in your product, because these are the people who are going to be driving adoption of your product. Do they want to do some type of clinical trial with your product? And maybe you can jointly put in a grant and do the trial together. Engage with your end customer. If you're looking at a rare disease, engage with the patient groups for that rare disease from a very early stage. Like, we are developing something, it's early stage, but we want to let you know that we're doing this. We have an email list. It's all about communication. What, you want to be in stealth mode until you get something approved, and then the drug's approved and you're like, hi guys, I've got a new drug, and everybody's like, what? I don't know what that is. I don't trust that. You got to build the relationships and the rapport and make people aware of what you're doing. This is a long process.
You mentioned a couple of things here that I thought was interesting. If you're coming up with a product and you help companies understand these things, for example, when you talk about the cardiovascular size, the plumbing and regional differences, do you help companies understand, hi, I'm bringing forward product X, whether it's a drug or a piece of kit? In this particular area, it will do well because of, and that might be something that's not really apparent. You don't normally hear people say, we over here have big pipes versus little pipes. That's unique. You talked about it briefly. There's a foundation or the grant, right? How does that plug into this? And what does the investor think? If we're talking cancer, there might be the cancer foundation of a given country. They're going to plug in, they want to see that. Are you beholden to them as a result, or is that an investor? How does that all come together? That'll make your modeling more dynamic.
Yeah. So investors love non-dilutive money. They encourage you to apply for as much non-dilutive money as you can. If you partner with the Mayo Clinic, for example, one of the most recognizable names, and you show that it works in their system, right? And maybe you get some money, like all these big healthcare systems, they have a little bit of money. Maybe you can get non-dilutive funding to do the real world implementation study in their environment. It's probably not drugs, but maybe it is drugs. Okay, let's just stick with medical devices because they're more visual. So you have a widget and you want to put it in a lab and see how it works. Mayo is on board with that because they think it's great. They might even throw some money in. And so then you do the work, you get the outcomes, you get the learning of what the healthcare practitioners think of your product. They'll often make suggestions saying, oh, I'd like the button to be on this side rather than that side. So they will help inform you what they would like the product to be. You can talk to administrators about cost savings and how it's going to work. You could even do some cost saving studies with the institution because everybody wants to know how much money is it going to save. Everybody's cash strapped. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the learnings of having that. And even if nothing else happens, you have those learnings, you've developed the relationship, you've moved the product along. But if they really like your product and they think it's useful, they'll adopt it. So you get some early revenues. And they'll also talk about it at conferences. So they'll say, guys, we got a new widget and it does XYZ and it's really great, saved us money or made my life easier or whatever the features and benefits of that are. And I think entrepreneurs need to understand that healthcare professional, physicians, key opinion leaders, they're people too. And they want to have something exciting to talk about. And they want to get up on a podium, a lot of them, and talk about the exciting things that they're doing. If you can align your product niche or direction with the research interest of the key opinion leader, you're made in the shade. This is the perfect relationship. And it doesn't have to be adversarial. A lot of medical devices are developed in coordination and in collaboration with surgeons because they're the ones who are in there doing stuff and going, I don't like this, or, I'm going to change this. Can be a very dynamic but satisfying situation to be in a relationship with healthcare providers and work in that environment. At the end of the day, everybody just wants to help the patient, bringing it back to the patient. Podium presentations are going to be there if you're helping the patient, right? So always comes back to the patient. What's the benefit of the patient?
Yeah. I didn't know how little I knew. Who are your clients and how do we reach you?
My clients are early stage companies, so pre-seed to Series A, either people just out of university or people who are looking for serious VC funding and they now need a proper financial model. I call my models, I say a VC-proof them because I structure them out in a way that, Excel is different sheets. You have your summary page, which is the overview of the company. And then you have your toggles. Anything in blue you can change. So Mr. VC, if you don't like a 2% adoption rate, change it to 1%, and then the whole thing will update. And then the other sheets are what's your market size, what's your actual P&L, what's your staffing plan. These are 5-year models, right? So they go out quite a bit. And then what's your homework page? So you got your market and you've got all your numbers there and you've put all your numbers in there and you've referenced it with not Chat GPT. So when you got all your numbers in there, it's all validated, and you put little line items in there like, this feeds back into here. Like there's a little map at the beginning of it. I try to make it as easy as possible for any investor because they look at hundreds of these models. And if it's hard for them to understand, they're going to say no.
So just as a quick rollback, and this kind of relates to the previous question, you have to build that model out, right? So you talked about furniture, et cetera. But when you're talking about nuances, like I'm going to launch a product in another country, do you already have that information part and parcel, or is that incumbent on the person looking for the pre-seed funding to know that and provide that to you? Or do you know that already and you kind of build it in and there's a back history?
Well, it depends. I was working with one company and they were looking at different types of operations. And I said to them, I will not be able to get this information for you. Not with the databases that I have. You need to find that information. And they had the information. So took their information and put it in. If it's something like cancer, it's publicly available. If it's heart disease, it's publicly available. Sometimes you have to kind of bang your head against the computer a bit before it spits up the answers. But when you're building a model, I'm not the be all and end all and have all the answers, right? There's a relationship between my client and me. I say, okay, you need to figure out reimbursement in the US. So when we get to this point, you have to pay a US reimbursement consultant to validate what we think we know. This is where the uncertainty is. We're more uncertain in the beginning. You think you know things, you've done your work, it looks all right. When it comes closer and you have some money, you put that in your model. I'm going to pay for reimbursement, or I'm going to pay for primary research. And you allocate funds for that. And then you get somebody who does that all the time to find the answers for you. But you have to budget for it.
How do they get a hold of you?
The easiest way is, I guess, go to my website or LinkedIn. My name, Vera Belaoussoff, spelled the way it is there. The company is B-Spot Consulting, www.bspotconsulting.com. There's a biography about me, some testimonials from happy former clients. Feel free to contact me. I love to meet people. I love finding out what people do, and I'd love to help them on their journey, figure out the puzzle of the financial model and plug the gaps.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner. And Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.